Welcome to my expat stories. This one's going to hurt. It's slow. It's careful. And it's about a man who thought he was doing everything right. This is Bob, 64 years old, retired history teacher from Springfield, Illinois. He went to Salento looking for peace after his wife died, and he thought he found a second chance at love. He met a woman. He trusted her cousin. And he lost $140,000, building a dream that never existed. Before you hear what happened, subscribe and hit like for more Colombia stories. Bob was careful, methodical, and still lost everything. Here's his letter. I don't know if I should be writing this. I've started it 3 times, and each time I felt stupider than the last. But I keep watching these stories and thinking, maybe someone out there is standing where I was 7 months ago, and maybe this will make them stop. I'm 64 years old. I taught history at the same high school for 36 years. I'm not a businessman. I'm not sophisticated. And after my wife Sarah died 3 years ago from cancer, I stopped caring about being careful with anything. Springfield felt like a graveyard. Every corner had her memory. The coffee shop where we had breakfast on Sundays, the park where we walked, even the grocery store made my chest tight. A buddy from school told me about Colombia, said it changed his life, said the mountains would clear my head, so I sold the house, took my pension lump sum, had about $180,000 saved, and figured I could live modestly somewhere warm for a long time. I picked Salento because it wasn't a big city. I'd had enough of noise, enough of people. I wanted mountains and quiet and maybe some time to figure out what the rest of my life looked like. I rented a small apartment on the edge of town for $400 a month. It had a balcony that looked out over the valley, and every morning I'd sit there with coffee and watch the fog roll through. For the first few weeks, I didn't talk to anyone except to order food or ask directions. I wasn't looking for anything. Not love, not adventure, just some space to breathe without feeling like I was suffocating. But then I met Claudia. It was week 2. I'd signed up for a coffee tour because I didn't know what else to do with my days, and everyone said the coffee farms around Salento were beautiful. The tour started at a little cafe called Café del Valle, and there were maybe 8 of us. Couple from Germany, 3 backpackers from Australia, an older Canadian guy, me. Claudia was our guide. She was 49. I found that out later. Dark hair pulled back, warm smile. She spoke English well but not perfectly, and when she couldn't find a word she'd laugh at herself and say something in Spanish and move on. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Just knew her stuff about coffee and seemed to actually care that we had a good time. We walked through the hills for 3 hours. She showed us the trees, explained how they picked the beans, let us try, roasting some over a fire. The whole time she was just easy to be around. Not pushy, not fake, just present. At the end of the tour, everyone tipped her and started walking back into town. I stayed behind. Don't know why. Maybe because she reminded me of Sarah a little bit. Not in looks, just in the way she moved through the world. Calm, steady. I asked if she knew a good place for dinner. She smiled and said there were a few. Then she paused and said if I wanted company, she'd be happy to show me. But only if I wanted. No pressure. I said yes. That first dinner we went to a little spot near the main plaza. She insisted on paying for her half. Told me about her life. Said she'd been divorced 5 years, no kids. Worked at the cafe doing tours and sometimes helped in the kitchen. She loved Salento but dreamed about doing something more. Maybe opening a small guest house in the mountains someday. It wasn't a date. Not really. Just 2 people talking. But I liked her. The next day she texted me. Asked if I wanted to see the Cocora Valley. Said it was her day off and she was going anyway. I could come if I wanted. We took a jeep up into the mountains. The valley was incredible. Those tall wax palms everywhere. Looked like something from a movie. We hiked for a few hours. She pointed out birds. Told me stories about growing up in Armenia. How she moved to Salento 10 years ago after her divorce because she needed a fresh start. I told her about Sarah, about the cancer, about how the last year of her life I watched her disappear piece by piece until there was nothing left. Claudia didn't try to fix it. Didn't say it gets easier. Just listened. When we got back to town, she said she'd cook for me if I wanted. Just pasta. I said yes. Her apartment was small, clean. She had plants everywhere. Photos of her family on the walls. She put on music while she cooked. Some Colombian singer I didn't know. We drank wine and talked. About nothing important. What books we liked. Movies we'd seen. Places we wanted to go. It felt normal. Like something I used to have. Over the next 2 weeks, we saw each other almost every day. Coffee in the mornings before her tours, dinner 3 or 4 times. She took me to her favourite spots. A little restaurant that made the best bandeja paisa. A viewpoint where you could see the whole town at sunset. A bookstore run by an old man who only spoke Spanish but let me browse for hours. She never asked me for anything, never hinted at needing help. When we went out, she always paid her half. When I tried to insist, she'd look at me and say, "Roberto, I'm not a charity case." I liked that about her. Week 3, she stayed over for the first time. We'd had dinner at my place. Too much wine. She was laughing about something and then she stopped and looked at me and said, "Can I stay?" I said yes. That night I couldn't sleep. Just laid there listening to her breathe. Thinking, this is insane. You've known her 3 weeks. You're 64 years old. What are you doing? But I also thought maybe this is what moving forward looks like. In week 4, she introduced me to her cousin Diego. We were having dinner at her place. She cooked pasta and we were drinking wine on her little patio when he knocked on the door. She said, "Oh, that's my cousin," and let him in. Diego was 52, stocky guy, big smile. Spoke decent English. Works as a fixer, he said. Helped expats get set up. SIM cards, bank accounts, finding apartments, that kind of thing. He sat down and had a beer with us. Told stories about growing up in Salento. About how the town used to be before all the tourists came. About his kids who were in university in Manizales. Made us laugh. Seemed like a genuinely good guy. Before he left, he said if I ever needed help with anything, to let him know. Gave me his number. Said gringos always need help navigating things here, and he was happy to do it. I liked him. 2 days later, my phone stopped working. I didn't know where to go to fix it. I texted Diego. He said meet me in an hour. He drove me to Armenia, 40 minutes away. Waited while they fixed it. Wouldn't take gas money. Said don't be stupid, it's nothing. On the drive back, he asked how I was liking Salento. I said I loved it. He said good. Claudia seems happy. She doesn't bring many people around. That meant something to me. Like I wasn't just another gringo passing through. Week 5, Diego helped me find a better apartment. Closer to town. $350 a month instead of $400. Better view. He knew the landlord. Talked him down on the deposit. Helped me move my stuff in his truck. Again, wouldn't take anything. The 3 of us started having dinner together once or twice a week. Sometimes at Claudia's place. Sometimes at mine. Diego would bring beer. Claudia would cook. We'd sit on the balcony and talk until late. It felt like family. By month 2, I was falling for Claudia. We were spending almost every day together. She'd come over in the mornings before work. We'd cook together at night. She started keeping clothes at my place. A toothbrush. Her shampoo in the shower. One Saturday we drove to a hot spring outside town. It was crowded. Families everywhere. Kids running around screaming. We found a quiet corner and just sat in the water for 2 hours talking about nothing. She told me about her marriage, how her ex cheated on her with a woman from his office, how she found out and didn't even cry, just packed a bag and left, how she spent a year feeling like she'd wasted her 20s and 30s on someone who didn't deserve it. I told her about the guilt I felt after Sarah died, how the last few months I'd been so angry at her for leaving me, how I knew that was insane, but I couldn't stop feeling it, how I didn't know if I'd ever forgive myself for being angry at someone who was dying. Claudia took my hand under the water, said we all do the best we can, Roberto. That night she said I love you for the first time. We were back at my place. She'd had a few glasses of wine. She said it quietly, almost like she was scared to say it out loud. I said I love you too, and I meant it. One night a few weeks later we were sitting on my balcony. She'd had wine and got quiet. I asked what she was thinking about. She said her dream, the guest house. She'd been saving for years, she said. Wanted something small, maybe 5 or 6 rooms, up in the mountains with a view. A place where people could come and feel peaceful. She'd run it herself, cook breakfast, make it feel like home. But she didn't have enough money yet, and she wasn't sure she ever would. She wasn't asking me for anything, just sharing a dream. But I remember sitting there thinking, maybe that could be our dream. Not just hers, ours. I should have known better. I'm 64 years old. I've been married for 38 years. I should have recognised what was happening, but I didn't want to. Month 3. Diego called me on a Tuesday morning, said his mother was sick, diabetes, needed medication the public hospital didn't have. Cost $800. He was embarrassed to ask but didn't know who else to call. His voice broke a little when he said it. I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll send it right now." He cried on the phone, said he'd pay me back as soon as he could. I told him to forget about it. That's what family does. 2 weeks later, his motorcycle broke down. He used it for work, he said. Needed $1,200 to fix it, or he couldn't take people around. He was so apologetic. Said he felt terrible asking again. I sent it. Claudia found out. She said, "Roberto, you're too kind. Diego's proud. He's going to feel bad taking money from you." I said it's fine. He'd do the same for me. She kissed me and said, "You have a good heart." Then his sister's kid needed school fees, $600. I paid it without him even asking. Just transferred it and told him to give it to his sister. Month 4. Diego came to me with something different. We were having beers at a little bar near the plaza. Just the two of us. Claudia was working late. He said his cousin had land for sale. 2 hectares just outside town. Up in the mountains. Incredible view over the valley. The cousin was old. Wanted to move to Cali to be near his daughter. Needed money fast. Asking $65,000 but would take it for family price if Diego vouched for the buyer. He said I should see it before thinking about anything. I didn't even know why he was telling me. I wasn't looking to buy land. But then he said Claudia mentioned the guesthouse dream. Said maybe I'd want to look. No pressure. Just thought I should know. I said, "Okay, let's see it." The next day the 3 of us drove up. Took about 20 minutes on a dirt road that wound through coffee farms. When we got there, I understood why Claudia's eyes lit up. It was perfect. Rolling hills. Coffee trees in the distance. You could see the whole valley from up there. The town looked like a postcard. Mountains all around. Quiet except for birds and wind in the trees. We met the cousin. Old guy. Maybe 70. Weathered face. Wore a straw hat and rubber boots. Didn't speak English. Diego translated. He said he'd owned this land 40 years, raised his kids here, but they all moved to the city. He was too old to manage it now. Getting harder to walk up the hill. Just wanted it to go to someone who'd appreciate it. He walked us around. Pointed out the best spot to build, where the water line was, where you'd want the access road. He seemed sad to be selling it, kept touching the trees like he was saying goodbye. Claudia grabbed my hand, squeezed it, whispered, "This is it, Roberto. This is the place. Can you imagine waking up here every morning?" I could. We drove back in silence. She was staring out the window, smiling. Diego was quiet. That night she came over. We sat on the balcony. She said, "I know it's crazy. I know we've only been together a few months. But I can't stop thinking about it." I said, "Me too." She said, "What if we did it together? Built something. Not just for me. For us." I looked at her. She looked terrified. Like she was waiting for me to say no, to tell her she was insane. I said, "Let's do it." She started crying. Said, "Are you serious?" I said, "I'm serious." We stayed up until 3 a.m. talking about it. What it would look like, how many rooms, what we'd call it. She sketched layouts on napkins. Said we could have a garden, maybe chickens. She'd make breakfast every morning. Fresh bread, local fruit, coffee from the farms around us. I felt alive again. Like I had a purpose. Like the years ahead weren't just empty space anymore. The next week I wired $45,000 as a deposit. The cousin wanted $20,000 more to close, but said we could pay it in 2 weeks. Diego handled everything. Said he'd make sure the paperwork was right. Claudia cried when I told her I'd sent the money. Said she couldn't believe this was happening. Said we were going to build something beautiful. We started planning immediately. She'd come over every night with notebooks, sketching layouts, talking about paint colours. She wanted blues and whites, wanted it to feel like the sky. She'd researched guest houses in other parts of Colombia. Showed me photos, said we should have hammocks, a fire pit, maybe a yoga deck. It was intoxicating. Every conversation was about our future, what we'd do in 5 years, 10 years. Maybe we'd expand, add more rooms. She even talked about getting married. Said when the place opens we should do it there, small ceremony. Just family, I was all in. Month 5 I paid the remaining $20,000 for the land. Diego said now we needed permits. Introduced me to a lawyer in Armenia. Guy had an office, business cards, spoke good English. Said the process usually takes 4 months, but he could expedite it for $8,500. I paid it. Then he introduced an architect, woman in her 40s, had a portfolio of projects she'd done around the coffee region, drew up plans for the guest house, showed us renderings. It looked incredible. Cost $6,000. I paid it, then we needed a survey. Soil testing to make sure the land could support the buildings. $4,200. I paid it. Claudia was involved in every decision. She'd go to meetings with the architect, suggest changes. She wanted bigger windows. A covered porch. She'd talk to the lawyer about timelines. Ask questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. She'd hold my hand and say, "This is really happening, Amma." Our dream. I was down to about 60,000 left in savings, but I didn't care. We were building our future. Then Diego's emergencies started getting more frequent. His truck broke down. Needed a new transmission. $2,800. He said he needed the truck to haul construction supplies once we started building. Made sense. I paid it. His father had a heart attack. Needed to stay in a private hospital because the public one was full. $3,500. I paid it. Diego came over one night, sat on my balcony, said, "Roberto, I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for my family. When this place opens, I'm going to work for you for free until I've paid back every peso." I said, "Forget about it. Your family." Month 6, we hit a snag. The lawyer called, said the construction permits were delayed. Some issue with the municipality. Apparently there was a zoning question because we were building on agricultural land. He said it happens all the time, but we needed to pay an additional fee to expedite. 12,000. I hesitated for the first time. That was a lot of money. Claudia said, "Roberto, it's normal here. Bureaucracy is slow. If we don't pay, we could be waiting 6 months. Maybe a year. We've already put in so much." She was right. We'd already invested 90,000. What's 12 more to keep it moving? I paid it. Month 7. The construction crew needed a deposit to start work. 18,000 up front. Half now, half when they finished the foundation. I was down to 35,000 left. I sat on my balcony that night doing the math in my head. Started with 180. Spent 140 on the land and permits and everything else. Another 15 on living expenses over 7 months. 35 left. No income. Living off savings. But Claudia came over with a bottle of wine, said construction starts in 2 weeks. The crew is lined up. By Christmas we'd have the frame up. By next summer we'd be open, taking reservations. She kissed me and said, "I love you, Roberto. Thank you for believing in this. In us." I looked at her. She looked so happy, so sure. I paid the 18,000. Total spent. $155,000. The week after I sent that last payment, I wanted to see the land again. Just to picture it, see where the foundation would go. I'd met a guy at a cafe a few days before, older Colombian, spoke good English. We got to talking. I mentioned the project and he said he knew the area well. Offered to drive me up and take a look. Said he'd done construction work for years and could give me some advice. We drove to the location Diego had shown me. He pulled over, looked around, said what address. I showed him the coordinates Diego had given me. He frowned, got out of the truck, walked around, came back and said, "Senor, I don't see any permit signs. No markers. Nothing." I said, "We just got the permits. Construction starts next week." He shook his head. Said, "I've lived here 30 years. If there was permit activity, I'd know. This land isn't for sale. Belongs to a family in Pereira. Has for decades." My stomach dropped. I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "I'm sure." I tried calling Diego. Number disconnected. I tried calling the lawyer. Voicemail full. I tried calling the architect. Number didn't exist anymore. I drove straight to Café del Valle, asked for Claudia. The manager looked confused. Said she quit 3 weeks ago. Said she was moving to Bogota. I said 3 weeks. She was at my place last night. He shook his head. Said, "No, senor." She left. Gave 2 weeks' notice. Took her last paycheck. Gone. I felt like I was going to throw up. I drove to the address she'd given me for her apartment. Building looked right. Knocked on the door. Elderly couple answered. Never heard of Claudia. Said they'd lived there 15 years. I sat in my truck for an hour. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. Everything. Hitting me at once. Diego wasn't her cousin. He was her partner. Her boyfriend. Whatever. The old man selling the land. Fake. Actor. Playing a part. The lawyer. Fake the architect. Fake the surveyor. Fake the construction crew. Didn't exist. She never loved me. 7 months. All fake. Every kiss. Every plan. Every dream we built together. I went to the police in Salento the next day. Filed a report. Sat across from an officer who looked like he'd heard this story 100 times. He said we see this with extranjeros. Very difficult to find them, senor. No last names, no real addresses, no paper trail. They move to other cities, change their names, do it again. He was kind but clear. There's nothing we can do. I called my bank in the US, asked about the wire transfers. Could they reverse them? Could they investigate? They said, no, sir. These were authorized by you. You sent them money willingly. There's no fraud protection for that. I did the math one last time. Land that doesn't exist. 65,000. Fake permits. Lawyer, architect's survey. 18,700. Diego's emergencies. 11,400. Construction crew deposit. 18,000. Living expenses over 7 months. 22,000. Flights and setup when I first arrived. 4,900. Total. $140,000 gone. I had 25,000 left. Flew home a week later. Couldn't stay in Salento anymore. Every street reminded me of her. Of ours, of the guest house that would never exist. I'm living in Milwaukee now. Small apartment. Closer to my daughter. She knows some of it. Not all of it. I'm too ashamed to tell her the whole story. I had to come out of retirement. Substitute teaching 3 days a week. 64 years old. And I'm back in a classroom because I gave away everything I'd saved. I can't look at coffee without thinking of her. I deleted every photo, every text, every voice note she sent me. But I still wonder sometimes if any of it was real. The way she looked at me when we planned the guest house. Her laugh when I tried speaking Spanish. That morning she made me breakfast and we sat on the balcony watching the fog roll through. Was any of it real? I don't think I'll ever know. I thought I was being careful. She wasn't 25. She had a job. She paid for things. She never asked me for money directly. It wasn't like those other stories where some young girl is obviously using an old man. This felt real, but I wanted it to be real so badly that I ignored everything that didn't fit. The land I never saw paperwork for. The lawyer who never gave me physical copies of anything. Diego's emergencies that always seemed to happen right before big payments were due. Claudia pushing just a little bit whenever I hesitated. The fact that I never met any of her friends, any of her family except Diego. If you're older and alone and someone makes you feel young again, makes you feel like you have a purpose, that's when you're most vulnerable. I got exactly what I wanted. A second chance at love, a dream, a future. They knew that, and they used it. That's Bob's story. This is my expat stories. Stay careful out there.